Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Kevin Harper. Welcome to another video tutorial. This time it's going to be a whole series of tutorials on Maxscript. We're going to take you from the beginning to an intermediate stage where you can actually create some tools for yourself. Now, I'm going to completely assume that you know nothing about Maxscript. I'm not going to assume that you know any terminology, how anything works, or anything like that. I'm not an expert. I'm just a 3D Studio Max artist who likes to make his life a little easier sometimes by writing tools, because it does open up a lot of doors and possibilities that you do not have without being able to use Maxscript. A little bit of background why I am doing this series, and you can skip this intro by hitting the button on the lower right corner. But a little bit of background why I'm doing this intro is I used to I go to a lot of CG studios here in the city, and I often work with other CG artists, and while I'm working we often have some tedious task that we have to do repetitively, and it takes up a lot of our time. So I'll spend a few minutes writing a script to automate that process so that it makes our whole life easier and makes the workflow a lot faster. And I often notice that the other artists will say, hey, yeah, I've always wanted to try to get into Maxscript, but and I try to go a little bit into the documentation, but it's really hard to understand if you don't already know programming, which is absolutely true. It was the same for me. The first time I tried Maxscript, I knew nothing about programming, and I did kind of the follow along of the beginning of the Maxscript stuff, but you get stuck very easily because the documentation of Maxscript seems to assume that you already know the fundamentals of programming. I then started programming, I then started getting into game design, and I started programming in Unity script, which is kind of a Unity version of JavaScript, and C#, and I realized that these, what they call object-oriented programming languages, are really like the same thing with different syntaxes. Like the logic behind it is all the same. And so I thought, hey, if Max is also an object-oriented language, maybe I could get back into it and maybe I could actually understand what's happening. And so I jumped back into Max, and I realized that the problem is not Maxscript. Maxscript is actually really laid back. The problem is the documentation. If you go into Unity's documentation, let me just pull that up real quick. So if you go into the Unity scripting reference, for instance, and you're looking for anything. For instance, a transform is kind of the control object of an object within, or the control component of an object within Unity. And you want to do something to it. You want to move it, you want to rotate it, or whatever via script. In the scripting reference in Unity, all you'd have to do is type transform, which is what I was talking about, that object, and you would get like the reference for the transform, right? So you click on transform, and then you get all the variables that are attached to that transform, all the functions that it can take in, and functions are, and I'll go through that in the lessons. What are variables, what are functions, and so on and so forth. But you get all this documentation like right away, and if you click on it, right, you get what it's looking for, as well as in a direct example on how to use it. Now, if you try to do this in Maxscript in the documentation, you're gonna have a really hard time. Like, just to look up something as simple as select your selection set or whatever. Just type in selection set in the Unity in the Maxscript reference, and you are like, you're gonna be completely lost. So I made this tutorial series which really takes you through all the steps of being able to create your own little tools within Maxscript, and it'll give you a good footholding. But the tutorial series took a lot more preparation and a lot more time to develop and edit and record and so on and so forth than my usual tutorials. So the first one is going to be free, and the other, there's about, I think there's maybe like 3, almost 4 hours of lessons in total. The first lesson is going to be free, so let's get started with lesson 1, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye. Alright, welcome to lesson 1 of Maxscript tutorial series. These Maxscript tutorials assume that you know absolutely nothing about Maxscript. This is taking it from the very beginning. I'm not going to assume that you know any terminology or anything like that. This is intended for you to follow along, and we're going to get you started right away. So first of all, to get anything started with Maxscript, you can see down here you have this little pinkish and this little white icons that you might have seen before. Now if you open this up, you're going to get a new window that pops out that looks like this. If it is pure white, that is because this bar needs to be dragged down. Now down here the white area is kind of your output, but you can write into either area and it will have the same effect. For us to be able to write any scripts that we don't know, the usual method of going about this is that we look up how to do this by just copying and pasting from Max Actions, and the rest we just look up on the internet. So first, to get started, under Macro Recorder we want to check this enable box. This is important because this will allow us to see Maxscript output of scripts. So for instance, if I now click on box, you can see that right now it has already had some output. So if I now drag here and I create a box, I now have the script already set for me that can create a box. So now if I delete this box, now you can see that it also ran some script to show me that I deleted the box. But what this allows me to do is I can just highlight this script, copy, and paste it at the bottom. Now if I go to the end of the line and I hit enter, you see it created that box just as it did before, because we copied that exact same script. But we can also customize that. If we delete this box, I can paste this script again, and maybe this time I say my length segments are 20 instead, and my width segments are 100, and my height segments are 60. Now I can go to the end of the script and just hit enter, and you'll see I have a much higher res a box created. Now instead of me deleting the object as I did before by hitting the delete key, I could go delete money sign. So the money sign is basically a shortcut for Max to specify the object that is currently selected. So for instance, if I make a sphere, right, and I type the symbol money sign into the pink spot and then I hit enter, you'll see that in the output I got information about this sphere. Now if I type delete money space money sign and I hit enter, I'm basically just telling it that it needs to delete my selection. Now this also can work for multiple selected objects. So if I have 2 spheres created and I hit delete money sign it now selected both of those spheres. Now you notice that in the output section, when I deleted one sphere, it said 1, and when I deleted two spheres, it said 2. That's just how it is. So, now for us to create a script, we could just write scripts in here and then you know, keep it going like that, but this wouldn't allow us to save it unless we save it as a notepad, and then we always copy and paste it in here and so on and so forth. But for us to be able to just run the script easily, we're going to open up the script editor within Max. So for us to do that, just click on File, New Script, and you will see this window pop up. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to create a script that creates this box that will then spin with a twist modifier over our current animation. So again, anything we don't know how to write, and this is kind of the focus of the tutorial, is to teach you how to fish, right? So instead of giving you fish. So anything we don't know how to write, it is important that we understand how we look these things up. A lot of things I have to go for the internet for. Some other things I can get an output from Max to do that. So first, I want to create a box. And I want this box to have exactly what this box has. Height segments 6, width segments 1, so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. So we're going to copy this line from Maxscript, from our pink section, and we're going to paste that into our new script. But we're going to make some alterations to this. First of all, let's save the script, and we'll call it twist box. Right, so now our first alteration that we want to make is going to be, I want to make this a uniform box. So let's say 20 by 20 by 20. That's width, that's length, width, and height, right? And then it has some other parameters. We're not really so worried about that, but and this right here stands for, the pause stands for the position that the box should be in. But we want to zero that out to put that right in the smack in the middle of the scene. So we're just going to say 0, 0, and 0. In Maxscript, just as in most other scripts, when you see something like this, position and then an open brackets with 3 parameters in it, it's called, in Maxscript it's called a point 3, I believe. In some other programming languages such as Unity script, it's called a vector 3. This is basically a single, I want to say variable, but we haven't learned variables yet, so we'll get there soon. But it's a single tag position with 3 different inputs, and it always looks for X, Y, Z. So it's looking for these 3 inputs. So if you're missing an input, it will complain about it. It is expecting you to have these 3 inputs. So let's save that script by hitting Control S. Now to execute a script, all you have to do is hit Control E. Okay, yeah. So all you have to do is hit Control E, and you see that this box has been created. Now, if we look at the box, it is labeled box 001. Alright, so now we have this box. And let's say we wanted to change the name of the box because it's made by our special script, so we wanted to have a special name, not just box 0001. So we can select that box, and then But we could just enter the code to change the name of the box, but how do we determine what that code is? All we have to do to find what that code is actually change the name. So I'm just going to type in new box, and you can see that I just got a code for renaming that box. So I'm just going to say selection. I'm going to leave the box out because I know that when I create this box, it's going to be my selection. So I want to leave the name, as you can see in the pink, it says box001.name, but I'm going to leave the box001 out, and I'm just going to say my current selection because it might be under a different name, or if you have already a box 001, it's going to label your new box 002, and so you don't want to rename your old box 001, you want to actually rename the object that you've just created. So we're going to name this one, to make sure that that happens, we're just going to leave the name out, and we're just going to say our current selection dot name, which is equals Twisty box. So now we have that script in there. We're going to test that. We're going to delete the box that we already have. We're going to save our script, and then we're just going to hit Control E, and as you can see, my box is selected and it's called Twisty box. Alright, the next thing we want to do is add a twist modifier to our Twisty box. So to do that, we're going to just check out what that code would be by grabbing the Twisty box, going down to our twist modifier, adding it, and you'll see that it says modpanel.add to selection twist. So we're just going to, either we could grab that line, copy and paste, or for better practice and getting it stuck on our head better, we can type it. So type mod panel dot add mod to selection twist UI on. Now you don't have to know all this stuff. You know, you don't have to necessarily, of course it's good for you to know what all these sections mean, and you can look all these up within the help files by just going to hitting F1 and going to the help files, and then you can type in, you know, whatever method you're currently working with. But it is not a necessity, it is not always necessary for you to know which each part of a function is or each part of a method is in order for you to get your job done. So once you added your Twisty box modifier, we're going to test it. So again, we'll grab the box, we'll delete the box, we'll save the script, and we'll hit Control E to make sure that our Twisty box is created with our height segments, and it has the twist modifier on it. Now the next thing we want to do, so as you can see, you've already created a script with an object that has a modifier on it, and you didn't really have to know any code to do this. All you had to do, you don't have to memorize this stuff. All you had to do was copy what you already see. Now note that if you do not see anything in the micro recorder, that might be because you have Krakatoa installed, and one of the bad side effects of Krakatoa is that it shuts off your micro recorder. You have to uninstall Krakatoa to work with this and then reinstall it when you need it, or whatever the case may be. So the next thing we want to do is add a twist to that modifier, like so, over a period of time. Now you can see it's already added the twist and it's doing its thing, and that's all good, but let's make sure that it really does that according to where it is in the timeline. So first of all, we're going to say we want to make sure that if we're doing this at some arbitrary keyframe, that we are actually going to the first frame in the animation. Now, as you can see, that if I slide my timer, I'm getting feedback from the Maxscript micro recorder that shows me the script that I need to slide my timer around. However, not everybody's animation starts at 0. Your animation can be from 10 to 30 or something like that. Your timeline, I mean. So to make sure that our animation actually starts at the first frame of the timeline, we need to find out what that first frame of the timeline is. And Maxscript has a function that will look this up for you. Now, I happen to know the function in this case, but I'm going to look this up for you because I want you to be able to look this up without knowing it, because that's the whole point of the tutorial. So what we're going to look up is going to be Maxscript timeline start frame, which the code for is animation range.start. But if we didn't know that, alright, so we'll just go. Now, we can search in the docs of Maxscript, but honestly, the documentation is so bad that even with really simple things, I have a really hard time looking anything up in here. Let's give it a shot. Timeline start. Yeah, you see spinning controller. It's like totally random stuff that has nothing to do with what we're looking for. It's really something so simple that we are looking for that this is really like inexcusable from Autodesk. But what we're going to do is just go to Google and just type Maxscript timeline start. So a very easy Google search, and then we'll just look at the forms, and we can see here animation range dot start. So over here we found someone saying animation range dot start equals blah 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 blah. So what we can do to test this out, we can just type in here animation range to see if that's a code. Undefined. Okay, we can say animation range, spelled it wrong. Okay, animation range is an interval from 0 to 100 frames. Okay, so is animation range dot start a code, which we just saw the other guy use on the forms? 0 F. So, but is that actually just saying 0 in value, or is that giving us the animation start range? So we'll move this the first frame to 34, and then we're going to type that code again just to make sure. Animation range dot start 34F. So now we know animation range dot start will give us the first frame within the animation. So we can then say within our little Twisty box creation script, we can say slider time equals animation. Oops, that's not an equal sign. Equals animation range dot start. Now, if I didn't misspell anything, note that the guy online used a capital letter for range, which is the proper way of doing it. However, Maxscript is not case sensitive, so it does not care whether or not you're using a capital letter anywhere or not. So even in these functions, if I would change this m to a lowercase m, it doesn't matter to Maxscript. Well, most programming language it does, but Maxscript is pretty laid back. So let's test this out. We're going to move our timeline. First, I'm going to bring this back to 0. There. And then our timeline is now at 34, and we're going to delete our Twisty box, and now save animation, and we're going to run our script, and you can see that it has created our Twisty box with the twist modifier on top of it, and it has moved our timeline to the first frame of the timeline, which is sweet. Now, what we want to do is we want to animate this twist so that it turns on, so that it is at 100%, whatever our 100% might be, at the last frame of the animation. So in order to do that, first we want to turn on auto key, which we would also if we were doing this by hand. So over here we can see it just told us set auto key on, set animate on. So we're going to type that, set animate on, and then we're going to say slider time equals animation range dot end. I don't have to explain that to you, you know that now. So now if I go to the last frame and I twist this, let's say we're twisting this by 100, then we can get the code for twisting this object. So now we can say selection dot, and I'm leaving out the name again, modifiers, yeah, probably spelled that right, and then twist dot angle equals 100, right? Then we're going to go set animate off and slider time equals animation range dot start, and then what do we get a code for this? Yeah, max time dot play, sure. Max time play. Okay, so let's see if that worked. I'm going to save that script, we're going to delete that box, and then we're going to run that script, and look at that. So now we have a script. Now we've made a script that if we hit Control E, it creates a Twisty box, and it automatically plays that animation back for us. Now, notice here that when we added this command for the twist modifier to spin, we're actually telling it object.modifiers, which is specifying which modifier is on there. And in this case, we're looking for, in these brackets, we're looking for the twist modifier. If I change this name to point cache or mesh smooth, turbo smooth, or skin, or whatever the case may be, then it will be looking for that modifier instead, and then afterwards the dot angle is a variable, or is a parameter within that modifier. You see, like I could, for instance, I could change this to bias if I just change this code, because I can see it has bias in there, right, within the modifier. So if I just type bias without knowing that there is such a code, I'm just kind of assuming that there is, because because I know that this parameter exists. So I'm going to delete this box just to test and see if that works. And you can see, now I didn't know that you could do that, but I could safely assume that you could because the parameter bias existed under angle. So I was able to animate that bias. You can see it going crazy here. It's not doing anything in the viewport, but you could also just grab this line, copy it, paste it under, and change this one back to angle. And now you would be animating both the bias and the angle of the box. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. So that is the first lesson on Maxscript. If you are interested in doing the others, the instruction is in the description. If you just wanted to do this free one, I hope you enjoyed it, and please leave a comment and a rating underneath. Great. Then in the next lesson, we'll be going over a little bit of terminology such as variables. There are going to be some for loops and stuff like that. So I know that doesn't mean anything yet, but we'll go over that and I'll make that very clear to you. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed it.